Welcome back to Speducation, and I am your host, Brandon Reed. If this is your first time coming to the channel, a special welcome to you. And if you are returning, welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at a new topic, and the question of today's lesson is, can a school refuse to deny your child evaluation or special ed testing? Well, we're going to get into that. So let's dive into today's lesson. Today's lesson: can a school deny a parent's request for special education testing? The short answer is yes, they can. But why? The school can refuse to test your child if they find your child has no evidence of a disability. Now, you're probably wondering, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense, because if my child has a disability, shouldn't they be testing that to see if he has a disability? And that's true. However, the data that they already have for the student suggests that the student is doing fine educationally. So they do have data on a student, and they can be looking at that data. They can ask the teachers how the student is doing. But if there's no identifiable disability, then the school can say, no, we refuse the test. In order to back up their request to deny the need for an evaluation, the school may try interventions to see if the student can be successful without the need for an IEP. This may include a team of teachers and administrators that review student data and identify any students that may need additional support. In the 6 or 7 or 8 schools that I've actually worked in, there were a couple of schools where we had what was called success teams. And these success teams would basically meet. It was a combination of administrators, school counselors, school psychs, behavioral interventionists, and special ed teachers. And basically what we would do is we would sit down and we would look at recommendations from teachers or recommendations from parents about students that may require a special ed test or special ed service. And so what we would do is we would create an action plan. And this action plan would basically be us trying interventions, because the first thing that a school psych will probably ask is, before we do any testing, what kind of interventions, what kind of supports were already put in place to help the student to be successful? Because if you haven't tried some interventions first, then it doesn't make much sense to try and do special ed testing. Because if you can try interventions and the student can be successful, then you don't have to go through the process of doing educational testing. However, if there is no data and there are clear indicators that the student does have some sort of disability or some sort of academic problems, then it would make sense to go through with actual testing. Now, if the student has a medical diagnosis, such as ASD, autism spectrum disorder, TBI, traumatic brain injury, BLV, blind and or low vision, deaf or hard of hearing, ADHD, which requires additional medication. If the student requires any of these things, if they have a medical diagnosis for any of this, then they do have a disability. Now, again, that doesn't mean that just because they have one of these medical diagnoses that they will qualify for special ed testing. However, the fact that they have this means that there is some sort of disability, and the school can say, well, let's see if this disability that they have is actually affecting their learning. So, a school may also agree to testing if there is a pattern of poor academic performance, there are frequent issues with the student's behavior, all other interventions that have been tried have proven unsuccessful. The main point of this is a school can deny a parent request for evaluation. However, the school must provide the parent with an explanation of what they can do to contest the school's refusal. The parent may ask the school to participate in mediation or request a due process hearing if the school does not intend to conduct the requested evaluation. However, in an effort to better understand the school's position and perhaps reach an agreement on the requested evaluation, the parent may wish to meet with representatives from the school to talk with the school personnel before deciding upon further action. So, what does this mean? Well, basically, what this means is that if a school refuses to do any kind of evaluation or special ed testing, then the school has to provide other options or provide an explanation as to what the parent can do to fight the school's decision. Okay. And one of those is a due process hearing, which schools really do not want to do because due process means it's involving lawyers. And I can tell you this from experience, typically, I would probably say almost 98% of the time when in the 15 years that I've been involved in special ed, that whenever a parent requests special ed testing, the school usually complies. And the reason why is because clearly there's some indicator that the student is not successful. And so the school, much like the parent, wants to do everything that they can to help the student be successful. But on those rare occasions that a student does not qualify and the school feels that there's not a special ed testing needed, in those cases, which are very rare, the parent can take other avenues. And one of those is meeting with the administrators, meeting with special ed teachers, meeting with maybe an action team to discuss what are some other options that we could take before we move forward with the evaluation with special ed testing. Okay. And one of the things that will probably come up is what interventions have already been provided to the student. If the school hasn't provided any kind of intervention and obviously the student is struggling academically, then it doesn't really look good for the school to say, no, this student doesn't need to be evaluated. Because clearly, if the student is really struggling and they're doing the best that they can and they're not meeting their academic goals, then clearly there's something going on. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. So next week, we will talk about how long does it take for your child to be evaluated for special education? So let's assume that you requested special ed testing and the school says, okay, we'll get that going. What is the timetable for that? That's what we're going to talk about next week. So hopefully you liked what you saw. And if you did, please click the like button. And if you want updates on future videos, feel free to click the subscribe button and then ring the bell for updates on future videos. And as always, if you have questions or ideas about future videos, please feel free to post those in the comments and make sure to share this channel with others. Because as I said multiple times, this channel is kind of like a grassroots movement, okay? It's important that it's shared with individuals that might benefit from it. So if you know somebody, please feel free to share it. And until next time, class dismissed.